Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks host the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Tonight at 7 p.m., it's soccer night, and kids glow around the bases postgame. Saturday at 6:30, it's Broadway night with postgame fireworks and Broadway rave. Sunday at 1:30, it's Military Appreciation Day, and the kids run around the bases.
A great day out for the entire family. Kids run the bases after every Sunday home game. Want the best seats all season? Get more Ferry Hawks for only $63. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
You know, this is interesting. You're not just a writer about space capitalism. You've written, maybe 30-some-plus books on the value of capitalism. And I'd like to get into a deeper discussion with all the different types of procedures that go around the world, different political theories, and capitalism is one that you specialize in. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you have 2 PhDs. One of them, your PhD dissertation, was written on the story of Adolf Hitler and about what was going on there in Germany, and you reveal some interesting stories about that, and maybe we'll talk about that in hour number 2. But talk about your passion for space. This is important to the listeners of this show because we talk about these subjects, just like last night. We talked about this with one of our space experts. Doctor, tell us more about your path to the stars and why you're so interested in the space capitalism.
Yes, it started very early when I was a child. When I was 9 years old, I saw a science fiction series in German TV at this time. And then when I turned 11, I edited a newspaper for my school cameras for the other students, and I sold them to the teachers. And it was called Galaktische Zeitung, what means galactical newspaper. And I wrote about astronomy and space. And then it was the time of the moon landing. I was 12 years old when the first man landed on moon. So I was really fascinated about it. In my children's room, there was a big poster of the Saturn V rocket, bigger than I. And then there was a huge map of the moon. I was really fascinated. But then the fascination came again a few years ago for another reason. Because, as you mentioned, I wrote several books about capitalism and to prove why capitalism is better than socialism. And in my other books, I proved it with comparing countries. Maybe later we can talk about it. For example, Poland, that was one of the poorest countries in Europe, and now it's Europe's growth champion since some decades because of capitalism. And then I turned to an industry where almost no one could imagine a few decades ago that it would become private, because in the 60s and the 70s, the space industry was more or less, even more government-led. And I wanted to understand, how did it happen that it became private? And a lot of people, even today, I saw it in my discussions, they don't know that it's almost private today. I give you maybe only one number in the beginning that is really fascinating for me. In the last year, we saw 324 rocket launches all over the world, 324. But 165 out of them were SpaceX. So it means if SpaceX were a country, it would be number one, far ahead of China with 88 launches. And to compare it with Europe, where I come from, whole Europe, with our government-led space agency, we had eight launches last year. So it means 5% from the single company SpaceX. And I think a lot of people haven't realized this shift to private. Maybe now, because we had this
Right.
biggest IPO in history, and Elon Musk becoming the first trillionaire now. More people understand. But this is what my book is about. How did it happen, this shift from government-led to private space industry?
Oh, you say it so well, Doctor, and I appreciate you. If you're just joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience, a rare opportunity, and we hope to have him back in the future. The door to the theater of the mind is always open for you, Doctor. Who is our guest? Dr. Rainer Zitelman. He is an author of so many books, and tonight and this morning, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate not only his birthday, the President of the United States' birthday, but also an introduction to his new book, New Space Capitalism, The Entrepreneurial Path to the Stars. Doctor, some of the fascinating things I've read in the foreword here by former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, I never knew this. He obviously talks about, and I quote here, "We've had a tragic loss of momentum from the time Americans landed on the moon to the present efforts to return to the moon. An amazing reason for that loss of momentum was the degree to which space exploration became a function of governments, politicians, and bureaucracy." As you say it so well, it's moved over to the private sector. But here's something that the audience probably doesn't know, and I didn't know it myself. When he was a second-term congressman, that is, Newt Gingrich, in 1981, he introduced the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. What's that all about? A future statehood possibility, don't laugh, ladies and gentlemen, for statehood for the moon. That's fascinating. Never knew that. And who knows, maybe what will happen is your and Mr. Gingrich's thoughts, maybe one day with colonization of the moon. Who knows, it might become a state. Wouldn't that be amazing?
I think what is really important is private property in space. And because this point is so very important, let's explain why it is so important.
Yes.
Let's go first back to the 60s. There was a space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. And this was about the question, who's better, the United States, capitalism, or Soviet Union, socialism. And Lyndon B. Johnson, the then president, he put it in his way. He said, who's number one in space is number one everywhere. Who's number two is number two everywhere. So it was a mobilization like in wartime. 400,000 people worked on the Apollo program, 20,000 companies, and it was almost 5% of the U.S. budget. So it was a huge mobilization. But in the moment when they planted the flag on the moon, the wind was out of the sails. They reached their goal,
yes.
And then after this, we had decades of stagnation. The launch costs remained always the same. And the question I asked in my book, why is that? Why did it happen? And my answer is, because there was no incentive, no reason. Men do nothing without having a strong reason. And the reason in the 60s was the Cold War, the race between Soviet Union and America. And at this moment, when the United States won this war, there was no longer any reason. And what can be the reason? I think the main reason why we are not already on Mars, for example, as often in life, is money. Money
You're
makes
right.
the world go round. It applies all the more to such an expensive undertaking as, for example, settling Moon or Mars. And I think with taxpayer funding, it
Yes.
might be possible to finance one or few missions to Mars, just as it was done between 69 and 72 with the 6 moon missions. But, what Elon Musk wants to build a city on Mars, we will talk about it later, I think.
Yes, we will.
This will only
Absolutely.
be possible with private capital. And this requires private property rights in space. And I think it's simple. On Earth, no economic system functions without private property and entrepreneurship.
Well, I love what you said, Doctor. Private property, you're saying, so the audience can hear it clearly. This will go into our hour number 2 conversation about the necessity for capitalism. And in so many ways, it's being demonized by so many forces out there. So that's a conversation for the next hour that we have. But what I wanted to get to, Doctor, is so much on this particular subject. If you'd like to ask a question or contribute to the conversation here, Dr. Rainer Zitelmann is our guest. His book, The New Space Capitalism, The Entrepreneurial Path to the Stars. We're speaking with him as he's speaking with us live from Berlin, Germany, early Sunday morning, as you would imagine, his birthday, and so much more to talk about in space. But the number to get in the conversation, 1-800-848-9222. Doctor, this is very fascinating. Newt Gingrich, of course, talks about this, but not to put NASA behind the eight ball here, so to speak. They've done so many incredible things. If it was not for NASA, we obviously wouldn't have gotten to the moon the way we did. And also a tribute to a person of German heritage also that, I don't know if you've ever met the man, but as we talk about the great Saturn V rocket, that's amazing. The whole creation of Dr. Werner von Braun's whole team, that to me is genius for the 1960s.
Yes, of course, this is correct. And he played the key role, Werner von Braun. But when they asked him after the moon landing, what's next? His answer was, we should make it profitable. We should make so that we can also make some profits with this. He understood it, but this was what didn't happen. And so I think this is the reason why we need so much private property in space, because otherwise it's not possible to finance all this.
Yes.
And the problem today is, and this is the biggest problem, that according to the Outer Space Treaty from 1967, Article 2, it's prohibited for nations to claim ownership over celestial bodies. It's prohibited. And to be honest, I have not such a problem with this, that it's prohibited for states. But the question is it allowed, or would it be allowed for private companies or private persons? And this is not clear, because in the 60s, no one could imagine that some decades later there will be people like Elon Musk, billionaires, or Jeff Bezos, who have the technical skills and the money to go there on their own risk. They couldn't imagine. So there's nothing in this Outer Space Treaty about this. And today there's a dispute among lawyers about, there are even space lawyers today, whether it's allowed for private companies or not to claim ownership of celestial bodies. They have different opinions about it. But I think as long as this is not clear, it's very hard to finance all this. And I make a suggestion in my book, and this is the key. I ask the question, who should have the right to acquire property in space? And my answer is those who have the financial means to reach, develop, and use it, and those who are willing to take the risk. Example, if Elon Musk, SpaceX, succeeds in reaching Mars and begins building permanent settlements, then ownership of land should initially go to the company, not the entire planet, of course, but a manageable area, perhaps the size of Singapore. Given the Mars has a surface area roughly 200 times larger than Singapore, so there would be enough for others to build multiple settlements. And such a framework would also make financing possible. SpaceX, for example, could place Martian land into a real estate investment trust, REIT, allowing market forces to determine its value. And then anyone could become a shareholder. You, our listeners, and I think, to be honest, I would prefer this if I compare that states or nations that they own Mars or Moon. No, let's go private. Let's take asteroids. Let's take Mars to the stock exchange. This is my idea.
I love it. Doctor, you're my friend on this, and I'm sure many people would wholeheartedly agree. We got about 4 or 5 minutes before this hard break comes up. I want to just throw this out, and we can carry it on after the break, too. The incredible IPO that's gone on here in the last few days, SpaceX, of course, its call sign, as we call it, SPCX off the NASDAQ. This is interesting. In the first day alone, obviously pushing what? The company's value theoretically, or maybe factually, to $2.1 trillion. the sixth largest company, at least on paper, in the entire world, SPCX stock. When people bought it, it closed at $161 a share. That's a 19% increase from its original offering, which is amazing. But the point is, it's going to make so many people rather wealthy. I know friends of mine that have purchased a considerable amount of this stock. And we want to make sure that it's not just people of wealth that can get involved in this. Think about it. If this stock goes the way it might, who knows? Everything's risky, but we give it positivity here on the show. And again, I'm not a broker or not involved in selling this, but it's one of the most amazing things, a new era, as we talk about here with you, new space capitalism. Doctor, this is a great time for America and the world. Please continue.
Yes, and of course it was amazing for me, this biggest IPO, and I can tell you why. It's also a personal reason. Because when I started to write a couple of years ago about space capitalism, to be honest, a lot of people laughed at me.
Sure.
Space capitalism, what's that? It's ridiculous. It's a niche topic. No one will be interested in this space capitalism stuff. So, okay, but I had my analysis. I went very deep in this. I spoke with so many people. I read 300 scientific papers, more than 100 books, go to conferences, and more I was convinced this is the future, this is the next big story. And of course now my book was published on Wednesday, and Friday there was this biggest IPO in history, and you know, I don't know whether you say it in a similar way in the United States. Who laughs last best? Then people laughed at me because they thought it's a ridiculous topic. But now I think it's the beginning of a new area, and of course we will see a lot of setbacks. Even I don't know what will happen with this SpaceX stock. There will be ups and downs.
Of course,
I see it
right.
in a long perspective. You know, I'm absolutely not interested what happens in the next 3 or 6 months. I'm interested what will happen in the next 10 years.
Right.
And I predict within the next 10 years we will see how they build the first small city on the moon. Within the next 10 years, we will see it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing, Doctor. No, it's really incredible. I mean, as a young boy, I was 13. I'm revealing my age now. When, of course, Apollo 11 astronauts landed on the moon, I was there in New York City with a rather poor quality black and white television my parents owned. And I even had to ask permission to stay up because here in the East Coast, that was an 11 o'clock at night event. And boy, it looked like we were looking right through a fish tank. The pictures were not that great, but you know what? The whole experience was just totally amazing. Something humankind has never done before. And if you have a question or comment for the good doctor, who's our guest, Dr. Rainier Zitelman, his book, a very powerful book, ladies and gentlemen, talking about the title, New Space Capitalism, The Entrepreneurial Path to the Stars.